Welcome, everyone, diving right into the story of a people driven by faith and sheer determination. Yes, I'm talking about the Dutch immigrant experience, where faith, resilience, and perseverance were everyday
Absolutely.
necessities.
So we're looking at how a community left behind everything familiar to seek freedom and opportunity, right?
Exactly. It wasn't just about economic hardship, though that played a huge role with unemployment and food shortages, but also about religious persecution. People had to, escape a system where the Dutch Reformed Church reigned supreme, leaving little room for those with other, more traditional views.
That's a tough spot to be in. And then there's the figure of Reverend Albertus Van Raalte, right? He really sparked the movement.
Right you are. Reverend Van Raalte, a strong-willed minister, saw that Dutch Christians who followed a conservative interpretation were essentially being
Yep,
marginalized.
that's quite something.
So he rallied folks around the idea of a fresh start in a new land. And it's like you're in a room full of closed doors and someone tells you there's one door open on the other side of the building. Yeah, that's the spark. Many Dutch immigrants, thousands between the mid-1800s and early 1900s, decided to cross over to America looking for that freedom.
Right. An opportunity not to be missed, indeed. But the journey itself, oh man, talk about a trial by water, wasn't it?
Absolutely. It was nothing like what we'd call luxurious travel today. These settlers boarded wooden sailing ships, which were cramped, overcrowded, and lacking proper ventilation. Imagine being squeezed in there for 6 to 10 weeks on a rough ride across the Atlantic.
That's really something.
Right? And the conditions were terrible. Storms were a common enemy, and many fell ill from poor nutrition and the lack of fresh water. Some even never made it, falling victim to disease or accidents at sea.
It really puts into perspective just how determined they were to set out on such a perilous journey.
Exactly. And then when they finally reached Michigan in 1847, they faced an entirely new set of challenges. Instead of a land paved with opportunities, they arrived in a wilderness with dense forests, swamps, and brutally cold winters.
Yeah, that must have felt like stepping into another kind of battle zone.
It sure was. They had to clear the land by hand, chop down massive trees, and build everything from scratch: homes, farms, even roads. And let's not forget those swampy areas that were breeding grounds for mosquitoes and diseases like malaria.
The elements really didn't give them a break. And winter, those harsh winters must have been unforgiving.
Oh, absolutely. Many families arrived unprepared for the bitter cold. Snowdrifts would cover the land, food was scarce, and they had to depend on cornmeal, wild game, and whatever they could forage. And yet, they forged ahead
Talk about
with an
resilience.
unyielding spirit. I mean, if you think about it, these settlers were essentially out fighting nature at every turn. They built log cabins, established schools and churches. They built communities from the ground up almost overnight, despite the hardships.
Right, and that communal bond was such a key element. It's almost like their shared struggles wove them together.
Exactly. And by the 1850s and 1860s, places like Holland, Michigan, started to really flourish. They became centers for agriculture, with many immigrants working as farmers, blacksmiths, millers, and carpenters. Their work ethic is something that resonates
Yeah, it's
even
inspirational,
today.
really. I have to ask, though, do you think their religious drive overshadowed the practical struggles, or was it also intertwined?
That's a good point. I'd say it's intertwined. Their faith wasn't just a spiritual escape, it was the bedrock that sustained their practical efforts. Establishing churches, like the one that later evolved into influential denominations, the Christian Reformed Church and the Reformed Church in America, provided structure and hope in a new world.
I see what you mean.
And they didn't just stop with religion. They clung to their traditions, carving out a cultural identity with things like Dutch wooden shoes, windmills like de Zwaan, and even their pastries and foods like stroopwafels and oliebollen.
Right. Those traditions really helped keep the community spirit alive. Now, there's one thing I find interesting. While their journey and struggles sound almost heroic, wouldn't you say there's also a hint of idealism in forging a new community? Like it's a blend of practicality and a dream?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, on one hand, they were battling very real, harsh conditions, and on the other hand, they had this almost unyielding hope that a better, freer life was waiting. It's a classic underdog story with layers of practicality and
That's a
idealism.
compelling mix.
And as the years went on, their legacy kept growing. Take, for instance, the Tulip Time Festival held each spring in Holland, Michigan. It celebrates that Dutch heritage with traditional costumes, parades, and of course, thousands of blooming tulips.
Yeah, it's like a living museum of their history, but with so much color and vibrancy. It's fascinating to see how heritage and tradition can survive through centuries, especially when the people who built those communities had to face so many challenges.
Right? And even today, historic buildings, Dutch bakeries, and churches continually remind us of those early struggles. It's a testament to their strength and determination.
Absolutely. It's like every corner of the city whispers a story of resilience.
And education played a role too. Remember Hope College? Founded in 1866. It stands as a beacon of the Dutch commitment to learning and growth amidst everything else they were building.
Yes, a focus on education helps cement their legacy. The whole experience really paints a picture of a community that rose from tremendous adversity to build something lasting. How do you think modern linguistic or cultural shifts have influenced this strong heritage?
That's an interesting observation. I would say that even as Holland has modernized, its Dutch roots remain very much at the core of the community's identity. Their descendants still keep the traditions alive, whether through festivals, architecture, or even surnames.
Yeah, it's like the past and present are in this ongoing dialogue.
Exactly. It's a form of continuity. The hardships they endured and the values they upheld continue to influence how people live in Holland
Right,
today.
you can see that legacy in every local event and tradition. I do wonder, though, isn't there a risk that modern pressures might dilute that heritage over time?
That's a fair point. While modern pressures are inevitable, the community seems determined to preserve its identity. The foundations laid by those early settlers were so strong that cultural touchstones like the Tulip Time Festival, traditional foods, and even the architecture remain resilient.
It's a balancing act between modernity and tradition.
Absolutely. And it's that balance that makes the Dutch immigrant story so compelling. Their journey wasn't merely a physical migration. It was a complete transformation, a melding of past values with the challenges of a new frontier.
Right, and that transformation is what continues to inspire people even today. I can't help but appreciate how their story mirrors so many other immigrant narratives, full of trials, hope, and ultimately success.
Yeah, indeed. Their legacy is more than just history. It's a reminder of how faith, community bonds, and relentless perseverance can remodel a future and even shape a city.
It's truly inspirational.
And that is what ultimately stands out, a testament to their strength and determination, a living, breathing heritage that continues to evolve while honoring its roots.
Absolutely, it's a story worth telling time and again.